Hello, my name is Allison Hill, and I'm a senior data scientist at IBM on the AI strategy and innovation team. Previous to that, I worked at RStudio for about 3 years, where I was the product manager for data science communication, working closely with the R Markdown team. And I was also a professional educator on the education team there. And one of the things that I spent a lot of time perfecting when I was at RStudio was building websites using R Markdown and deploying them quickly and usually painlessly through Netlify. And for the month of December in 2021, Netlify is offering $500 donated to charity for every site that you sort of dust off and deploy to Netlify. It can be an old domain. It's called Dusty Domains is the challenge. So it can be an old domain that you have kind of laying around that maybe you haven't updated in a while, or it could be anything new. It could be a Netlify randomly generated domain. So I thought it was a great excuse to be able to show some of the power of using our Markdown for making simple, elegant websites quickly and easily. How to use Netlify to make your life easier, and then also make some money for charity in the process. So hopefully if you've been following along with me, you've been making some nice websites. I'm definitely of the opinion that you can never have too many websites. I may be sort of at the, at the end of testing that hypothesis. We'll see how well it goes for me. I have a lot of sites deployed to Netlify. But today I wanted to follow up on a request that I got. I showed some solo GitHub patterns for working with specifically a BlogDown site. So a Hugo site made with the BlogDown R package. But today what I wanted to share was some GitHub and Git patterns for working with a collaborator. So sort of some paired patterns. So I'm going to show a few features. I'm not actually sure that I'm going to deploy a new website today, so I may not be able to make any money for charity. But I thought these were important enough that it would be worth showing because the solo patterns are really helpful, but where the power of being able to use version control and Netlify comes in is when you have more than one person working on it too. I think you can definitely have fun as a solo person, but I think you can also really benefit if you're part of a team. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. So the first thing I want to share is something kind of newer in the GitHub UI, actually. So this is not even something that you use on your local computer, but this is a fork. So if you've ever forked somebody else's repository, it kind of has like a nice little icon of like a book opening up and a fork in it, I think. And so what you're doing is you're essentially creating a copy of that person's repository in your GitHub. So it's right now I'm in my fork of Julia Silge's website. So you can see that the owner here is Aprez Hill. That's sort of like the org name or the username. And then the repository is named juliasilge.com. And I'm in my master branch of my fork of Julia's website. And you can see that I forked it from Julia Silge's version of juliasilge.com, right? Now, one of the things that sort of blew my mind when GitHub actually added this to the actual UI was something that I had really suffered with a long time when I first started working at RStudio was the ability to fetch an upstream branch. So I'm going to show a really great graphic from Jenny Bryan's Happy Git with R, one of my favorite books. So first of all, she has a really great description of forking and cloning it. These images may not have resized properly. These are huge. Let's see if I can open the image in a new tab. There we go. This is, let me move my buttons. I wish there was an easy way to make those smaller. Okay, so this is a graphic of this part being the online on github.com portion of your life, and this part is on your laptop. So when you fork and clone it, you're taking the version that's on their GitHub. So I'm taking juliasilge.com from Julia Silge's github.com account, hers, and I've made a fork of it. So hers is the yellow one, mine is the red one. So that's now my origin. And then I was working on it locally after I did my fork, and then I cloned it locally. And then I was able to push up to here. And what I didn't show in my video was that I actually did a PR to Julia's repository with her new Hugo Aparo site that we made in a previous video. So I was able to push from here get it up to my GitHub, and then do a pull request to see if she'd be willing to accept my change. So that's fork and clone. So that's pretty basic, and that's usually what you would do by yourself. Let's see what this, if this image is different. I think this is, okay, that is the same image. I have to open them up. This is fork no upstream sad. Okay. Jokes. As time goes on, the original repository, the owner repo, will continue to evolve. So Julia's site has evolved. For example, she changed it. She actually updated it to be Hugo Aparo, which I was really excited to see. So this is Julia's new website, which I think looks gorgeous. So the her version has changed, but I haven't updated my master branch yet. Her master branch is showing what is currently deployed here. So I would like to get to the upstream changes. So let's look at the image. So this is the happy fork triangle. So Julia has made changes. I have my fork, and I would like to pull in the upstream changes for myself. Now, this used to only be possible to do on your local, on your laptop, for example, down here, but now you can actually do it in the GitHub UI. So there's this cool button, Fetch Upstream, which shows you that, for example, my master branch is 8 commits basically behind Julia's version. So she had 8 more commits. I can do a compare. Let's look at compare. So this is basically like a diff view. If you've been playing around with pull requests and looking at that, you can see that she did a few changes from when I had forked it originally. So I'm going to fetch and merge it in the UI, which is like amazing to me. Okay, so now this branch is now up to date with Julia Solgay master. Okay, so you'll notice that it doesn't do anything on my end, like it doesn't add a commit, it doesn't do anything. I've just made it so that now my, my fork of Julia's repository is now up to date with hers, with the upstream version of her repository. And this is just a really nice feature. You might have a lot of stale forks laying around, and it's always been something where you have to go into your local version and pull upstream changes, push them up to GitHub. But this is just a really nice, feature for me. I've used it a lot since GitHub first released it, and I think it's only been recently. So that's one that I really think is helpful. So if you're collaborating with somebody else, or if you're just trying to fork and contribute to somebody else's work, like maybe documentation or a package or a website, you can do this on your fork and fetch their upstream changes as they work. There's also a really nice little button for contribute. This branch is not ahead of the upstream, no new commits yet, enjoy your day. So if I did make another fork and made some changes to Julia's site, you can click on there as well. But as we saw, when you push to a branch, usually there's a little yellow call out button at the top. So that's the first thing that actually makes me very happy. And that is, there's a great image in Happy Git with R called Git Upstream Changes for a Fork. So this is where Jenny documents it. So she was saying, no, you can't do this via GitHub. That's not true anymore. You can. She's saying that you might hope that GitHub could automatically keep your fork synced up with the original, and that's still not true. It won't automatically do it. You don't want it to. You'll want to do the fetch yourself. But you can see here that this is where she was documenting, to open up all the images. Fork no upstream sad. Let's see. Where's the money image? This is the one. Oh, so I already showed this one. So this is what the UI now allows you to do in the actual UI. So before, you had to add an upstream from the fork, and you had to verify your upstream remote. And every time I had to do this, I had to actually go to Happy Git with R to remember these magical incantations and Git to be able to do this properly. And now it just does it for you in the UI. So that's really nice. Another feature that I think is extremely, extremely helpful is using a actual program for being able to use GitHub and connect with GitHub apart from RStudio. So this I resisted for a very long time. In my time at RStudio, I mainly used RStudio as my actual way of interacting with Git and GitHub. And there's a ton of different, tools for doing this. So here's like Source Tree is a popular one, free Git GUI for Mac and Windows. So this one does work for Windows. I have not tried this one yet. I know that I think Jenny Bryan has mentioned that this is a popular one. Every time I've downloaded some of these, I've kind of just felt overwhelmed because I don't know as much about Git as maybe it assumes. And I find this kind of view just like a little bit overwhelming to me. So I have to confess that I did not totally enjoy having a Git GUI locally on my computer. I just used RStudio for it. But I have been using GitHub Desktop on the recommendation of one of my friends from RStudio, Rich Ayanan. And I have to say he's spot on. That is actually really, really nice. And it makes some things easier with collaborating with other people. And Rich and I are actually collaborating a lot lately, and I've been using GitHub Desktop. So I wanted to show a few of those features that I find especially helpful. And because I'm on a computer that is different, because my old computer, it's not an old computer, it's a brand new computer, but it has decided not to wake up. So I have installed GitHub Desktop on this computer that I'm on to show you. So when you install GitHub Desktop, you do allow it to log into your GitHub. But then the nice thing is you can clone a repository from the internet. So I can clone anything from github.com. I can pick a URL, GitHub Enterprise, you can sign in there as well. You can also set up sort of like a directory locally that has all of the GitHub repositories that you want to access there too. So I think that's a really nice feature. You can just immediately kind of browse what's already there. So let's do, and then you can create a new repository and add an existing repository. So these are all just really nice features. So I'm going to clone something that I don't believe I've cloned yet on this computer. Let's clone my actual website, or that's an R-bind. So I'm not actually sure if it can access that. Bind Apres Health. Let's see if it'll do that. Local path, documents, GitHub. Let's try it. So my website might be a big clone. We shall see. It's a big one. I probably should have chosen a smaller one. So in the meantime, I'll share that the GitHub Desktop, whoever is the product manager for GitHub Desktop, it's really chef's kiss. Very, very nice. This is how you download it. Desktop.github.com. Focus on what matters instead of fighting with Git. I have found this to be true. Whether you're new to Git or a seasoned user, GitHub Desktop simplifies your development workflow. I believe it's only available for, it is available for download for Windows as well, and for Mac OS. This is what it looks like. It looks a little bit mystifying in here, kind of like the source tree, but trust me, I'm going to show you some features that are really, really nice about it. It's pretty basic. I really like it. Okay, so let's see if it's done yet. Oh my gosh, only 15%. I should have picked a different repository. Let's see. I wonder, let's clone something new and it might slow everything down. Let's do, I'm trying to look for one that's a little bit more recent. I could do Bake Off. There we go. Okay. So here I'm in a package down site, a package down repository, or a package repository with a package down site. It's for data and some ggplot palettes that I developed for the Great British Bake Off. And you can see that here's the view when I access that repository. It tells me what current branch I'm on, it's fetched the origin, and it's detected that I have no local changes. If you do have local changes, this is how you enter your commit messages and you commit to master. The nice thing is that you can quickly see the other branches that are available to you. So let's see, maybe I'll grab this BSLib branch. Okay, so you can see that immediately when I switch branches, I can fetch the origin. So that's me fetching the actual origin of the branch. But then you can also, this is like a huge feature for me, you can choose a branch to merge into BSLib. So this is another one where if you've got upstream changes from your own main branch, but you're working in a feature branch, you're working in a branch where you're making changes. So here I might be making changes to this package to use BSLib, the Bootstrap library package that RStudio developed. If I want to be able to pull in the latest changes that I've already merged into my main branch, maybe a collaborator has done some changes to something else and they've merged them in, and I want to be able to see those in addition to the work that I'm doing in the BSLib branch. This is so cool. So you can choose a branch to merge into BSLib. So you can pick and say, okay, I want to merge master in, or if there's work being done in another branch by another collaborator, which is a really, really common scenario for if you're working with somebody else. Like it's totally natural to be able to have a conversation with somebody that you're working on in the same repository and say, okay, I'll work in this branch and do this work. You work in this branch and do this work. And then you may be working in tandem and you may want to be able to pull in their changes and be able to see them in your branch. So this is exactly how you would do that. Or maybe they do their work in their branch, you merge it into the into main, and then it's kind of in production at that point. It's in the main branch, and so you can then merge in and kind of update your branch based on what's in main. So I think that is a really, really cool feature, and I've referred a number of people that I work with now to this ability to do this really cleanly and easily, and that's been really, really popular among my friends. We've had a lot less Git snafus at work because of that. Okay, so that's merging a branch into another one. So this happens a lot. It's sort of a similar workflow to if you're pulling in upstream changes from somebody else's fork. This is pulling in upstream changes essentially from one of your other branches. So the previous one that I just showed you was pulling in upstream changes from somebody else's repository, one that you had already forked. This is more like pulling in, changes from your own branch within your own repository. Another thing that I think is very cool is if you want to create a new branch, you can do so right here and click on new branch. And what I really like is that it's super clear that you create the branch based on either master, the default branch in your repository, pick this to start on something new that's not dependent on your current branch, or because I already have the BSLib branch checked out here, it gives me the option to create a branch based on BSLib, the currently checked out branch. So this was a common issue that I had when I initially first started using Git, was that I'd create a new branch and I wouldn't realize in the RStudio IDE what my base was. Sometimes I would do it very intentionally off of the main branch. Other times I would make the mistake of creating one branch and then realizing I needed to create another branch and not being totally cognizant of which one my new branch had been based off of. So I really love this interface because I can say, okay, here I'm going to create a totally different branch, but I'm going to base it off of BSLib. You do have to name it. So let's do like BSLib2. Oh, it switched to Apress Hill. Okay, so now I'm on BSLib2. That was confusing. Okay, so now I'm in BSLib2. It says that your current branch hasn't been published to the remote yet, so it's still only local. So another thing that's really nice is that this has this like automatic integration where I can just publish the branch, and I'm really appreciative of that feature as well. The way that you'd actually make changes in here is a little bit different than how I'm used to. I actually have it set on my normal computer to use VS Code. So I do like this integration of being able to open in your text editor of choice or your code editor of choice. But this is where I would probably open up RStudio. And if I did make changes in RStudio, it turns out that I'm able to see them and use GitHub Desktop for that. So let me see. I'm in GitHub Bake Off. So I'm going to open this up in RStudio so you can see it's still an R package. So let's see, I'm going to maybe change the, I can change this to dark. Okay, so now when I change that, you can see that the GitHub Desktop actually updated and shows now that you have this change here. There's also a little history pane, which you can see all the things that I've changed here. So your commit here, drag and drop to cherry pick. Copy commits to another branch by dragging and dropping them onto a branch with the branch menu or by right-clicking on a commit. That's very cool. This is all just like a really nice interface for me, at least. And then one thing I didn't realize at first was that you can kind of check and uncheck boxes here to do your commits kind of piecemeal. So if I wanted to make another change, let's say, I was testing something. So let's say I delete that file. That change should show up here. So you can see that little like icon where it says deleted versus modified. So if I wanted to do separate commits for each of those, I could just kind of like uncheck that box, have a commit where I commit to BSLib2 where I say like, let's see, what did I do? I said change navbar to dark. So I can do that commit and then rm duplicate package down YAML file. So I'm just making sort of silly changes right now to show you. So I've made now 2 commits and you can see that now I can just kind of publish this branch to GitHub. It also shows up here as well. So I think that's very convenient. You can also click immediately on this view on GitHub button. So I'm not like fishing around. Now when I'm here, you can see that BSLib2 had recent pushes less than a minute ago. So if I'd been collaborating with somebody else who was maybe working on BSLib branch and I'm working on the BSLib2 branch, now I could do a compare and pull request where instead of having my base as master, I change my base to BSLib. And then you can see the 2 commits that I just made here. And then you're kind of back in the same world of some of the GitHub tricks that I showed in a previous video where you can do a draft pull request now, you can talk about it. This has nothing to do with Netlify, but I think this is a really helpful workflow to consider if you're working on websites together with somebody else. If this one had a Netlify component to it, it would automatically generate a deploy preview. So if you're working on a blog down site with somebody, it's really nice to be able to do this and be able to kind of switch back and forth between branches. So once you adopt this like branch workflow of every change that you make is in a branch, then you're able to use kind of some more sophisticated tools like GitHub Desktop and maybe understand kind of the reason why some of the features that I just showed you are so helpful. So being able to get the upstream changes, being able to make a new branch and being able to select which branch to kind of make the base off of, that's super helpful. And being able to fetch and publish just right from this editor. RStudio does this for you, but I actually really find the interface here really, really nice, and it'll serve you well if you do end up using VS Code. You can set that up to be your default editor. So if you look up GitHub Desktop default editor, I believe you can configure this. So I have it set up to be VS Code, Visual Studio Code on my work computer. Unfortunately, you can't have it ping RStudio. I tried looking that up and I couldn't figure out how to do that. So if you know how, please let me know. But so far, that's been my only source of kind of slight annoyance, was that I wish I could open an RStudio here. But I've really enjoyed using this tool, and I think it's made working with GitHub from the command line a little bit easier for me, because I don't have to remember how to pull in upstream changes anymore. I can very easily create new branches, push them, publish them, and see the changes that I've made. It's just a little bit of an easier Git UI. So I really recommend it if you're kind of been using the RStudio UI, but you might have felt like you were kind of needing to use the terminal a lot because the UI kind of only got you so far, I really recommend giving GitHub Desktop a try and seeing how that works for you. I know it's one more thing, but it is one thing that makes dealing with Git a lot easier, and that is a very welcome thing for me. The other things that I'll note are if you go into, let's see, let me go ahead and like merge that in. I'm going to merge this because it's it was two things that didn't. So I'm going to create the pull request, and then I'm going to do a squash and merge. So I'm merging BSLib2 into BSLib1 now. So I'm going to go ahead and delete the local branch. And then let's go back to GitHub Desktop. And I'm going to fetch the origin again. So that means I'm going to pull in BSLib. This is super nice. Okay, so what you see is that it actually has pulled the current branch, has a commit on GitHub that does not exist on your machine. So it pings you because I merged the changes from BSLib2 into my BSLib branch, and it's telling me that there's been changes. So you can pull origin and do that really quickly. I love this. I think that's really, really nice. It's a nice way to start getting some interplay between branches and not feeling so wedded to the GitHub UI as well, or figuring out how to do this stuff on the command line. So I hope this was helpful to you. I think these are some nice paired patterns for using GitHub, especially with websites. And you have to use GitHub in order to be able to really use Netlify super effectively. So I hope these were some nice tips for you. Definitely check out the solo patterns as well, because those are helpful ones that I use. So thank you for joining me.